So, good afternoon, ladies and gents, and welcome back to the course. If you remember, last week we were listing a few inspirational cases for you, which were actually related to either intrapersonal conflict or interpersonal ones, or family or business or global international ones. If you remember the Lufthansa case or the Tesco's case, or there was the British oil spill case and stuff like that, which I hoped would be inspiring for you for the final presentations you will need to hold in the intensive week. Then afterwards, we mentioned, we kind of dug deep into sociology and mentioned Marx's main theory of the manifesto that he came up with, and that was all about social stratification, and I already implied to it, I'm thinking, or I hope that it was criticized quite a bit. And today we will get acquainted with the criticisms that his theory received so that you get a full-on holistic picture of the whole theory of conflict. And today we will also go into how it was criticized and what types of other conflicts, because Marx was inherently focusing on social conflicts rather than economy-based, personal-based, or any other types of conflicts. So I will introduce a few more aspects to you so that you can also get a holistic picture of conflict in here. And last week we also mentioned a few types of aggression as well. As far as I remember, we mentioned like the territorial one, moral one, autoaggression, frustration-related one, possession-related, and a lot of others. And this is where we are going from today. And I was thinking about going into a rather juicy ending today, if we still have got time for this. We shall see. And I don't mean to be taking more time than approximately 40 minutes, because I think that's the main level of tolerance of people in general for the videos. So let's just jump right into it, and we shall see how far we can get today, and we will just kind of be happy with whatever we've got. As far as the criticism goes, I wanted to first list a few sociologists who were huge in the field of conflict theory as well. And number one is going to be Luis Cosa, who was born in 1913, so right at the beginning of the previous century. He's no longer with us, and he's the first to consider the functional kind of and functionalist consequences of conflict. So he was rather approaching from a positivist point of view, and much as like Marx was saying that a conflict is always a detrimental, exploiting and exploitive kind of an issue, he was saying that it's not at all only negative whenever a society gets into conflict. Oh wow, I inserted a picture of him as well. Ladies and gentlemen, please meet Luis Cosa. So, that was very necessary. So, he said that conflict was a natural and necessary part of society, and it was absolutely normal to have a conflict in a society. And he also said that actually a social kind of atmosphere is only moving forward if there are conflicts. So, practically, this is how the life cycle of society is kind of moving along conflicts, basically. And it has become an imposing, positivist, functionalist approach to conflict within sociology. He was the person to spread it. And he actually was quite mainstream in sociology, so many people were following his thoughts. Now he said, and that's a quote from him, "Groups require disharmony as well as harmony, dissociation as well as association, and conflicts within them are by no means altogether a destructive factor." So he mentioned that conflict itself is not at all a negative one, or not always a negative one. Of course, we can mention a few conflicts which are absolutely negative, and all the outcomes are negative, and in the long run, it is negative. But he said that a few conflicts are not like that. He says, "From being necessarily dysfunctional, a certain degree of conflict is an essential element in group formation." I think we can partly agree with this as well. A certain type of conflict or cooperation in general, I think cooperating within the field of anything, studies, education, of course, the workplace, everything, it is an inspirational force rather than, not always, but sometimes an inspirational force rather than a detrimental force. So he might be right about it. Another scholar who was criticizing Marx, because Louis Koser was criticizing that Marx was saying that conflict is inherently very wrong and only negative. He was criticizing Marx by saying that it's not always the case. Conflict can be absolutely positive as well. Ralph Dahrendorf, he was born in 1929, and he clearly blends elements from Marx and Weber. Weber was also criticizing Marx, of course, and he sprinkles elements from Koser to present a new understanding of conflict within a society. So from Marx, he takes the idea of dialectical change, by which he says that social structures are capable of producing within themselves the elements of their suppression and change. So society itself is kind of making or kind of legitimizing the high power and creating their suppressors. So that's what he mentioned, but he's taking other forms from other people, for example, from Weber, who was criticizing Marx by saying that Marx was not at all focusing anything on the economy whatsoever, or not much. His theory was about production and economy, but it wasn't focusing on the economic point of view. It was only focusing on the sociological one, that how it is affecting the people and how this whole oppression and exploiting of the weaker labor force, how it is going to affect the people and not the economy. And so Weber was criticizing him for that. Ralph Dahrendorf was also taking this bit into his theory too. Yeah. And he was also saying that Marx was only kind of approaching from a political and sociological point of view, and he said that not all workers have got the same political interest, which is quite true, because just because somebody belongs to the labor layer, they might not have the same political interests as well. For example, if you take a look at yourself or your own social layer, not every single person in your group, for example, has got the same opinion politically, or the same goals in life, or the same, whatever, religious points of views. And so for that reason, Dahrendorf really criticized Marx, because he was just taking everybody under the same roof. And if somebody is a labor, they will have these problems. If somebody is an oppressor, a bourgeoisia kind of member, then he will have these points of views, and that's it. And so he was criticizing Marx for this quite a bit. Okay, and from Weber also, Dahrendorf was taking the economic points of views as well. Our third theorist is going to be Randall Collins, who was criticizing Marx again from the 1940s. You can tell that we are going ahead in time, because I could find some colorful pictures from this man, and I couldn't find one from the previous two ones. And Collins was actually drawing on the works of Weber, Durkheim, and Goffman as well. I'm not sure if we have any previous sociology students in here, and I'm not sure if you know these names. Durkheim, I'm pretty sure you do, because he was quite big. Weber as well, I'm pretty sure you do. Goffman, maybe not, I'm not sure. But Collins argued that symbolic goods and emotional solidarity are amongst the main weapons used in a conflict. And it was right, Marx was right about it as well. However, this micro-level orientation is a unique, powerful addition to the conflict theory, because most theories kind of, especially the Marxist theory, it was kind of approaching conflict from a macro level. So Marx was taking a look at it here is the two classes and they have got these issues. It's a macro kind of approach. And Collins, he himself was introducing a micro level kind of approach to it. And he was saying that each group, and this is going to be the main issue in here, Marx does not see classes from a micro level at all, very similarly to Dahrendorf's kind of political problems in here. Because Collins was saying that, okay, that you belong to the same class, but what if you're older? You will have really different problems. With coronavirus as well, we've got different problems. You and I, we are scared of the virus because we know that if we catch it, we will be in bed for 2 weeks and we will feel horrible and In the worst case, we might get to hospital, but that's it. If you're an old person, you're scared for your life. You've got completely different kind of problems, even if we belong to the same financial level or the same educational level. They will have much different problems. If you're a villager or an uptown person, completely different problems, even if you belong to the same educational level or the same financial level. Your religion as well, completely different. If you're married or divorced, if you're black or white, that's going to take so much of a difference. And Marx was not at all taking these into consideration. He was approaching from a macro level, and Collins was approaching from a micro level, right? This is going to be, I think this is the most important one. So for the exam, if you know all the others, that's okay. But Collins is going to be the main issue in here, because I find that this one is the main problem with the Marxist theory, that it is just like holding everybody under the same roof and just trying to kind of paint everybody with the same brush. That's not really, that's not realistic, to be fair. It's just not what is happening really in real life. It's okay in a theory, but it's not depicting real life in general. Now, we can also deal with group cohesion as well, and how a group can actually defeat conflict, or why a group is stronger in order to defeat conflict or fight conflict rather than an individual. Why do we have an attraction towards getting into groups and doing things not alone but with a bunch of other people? We do have a bunch of good reasons. Groups have a strong and explicit sense of identity. A group identity is always going to be much stronger because you've got a sense of belonging. Are there any social groups that you belong to? And what do you feel? How does it feel to belong to a full-on social group of people? Why do you think, what kind of identity would you say you have gained in this one? I'm very curious. They have a worldview that polarizes the world into two kind of camps, them and us. So the in-group and the out-group. It's not a new phenomenon. It's always been that way. This is why we are scared of foreign people, foreign cultures sometimes. It's us and against them, and them. And that's going to be quite an important factor. Be able to perceive their beliefs as morally right. Of course, we are kind of brought up in a way that is going to be morally right. And if another culture does something different, then we will think that that one is not the right one and our one is the right one, of course. This is why, for example, globalization is such a problem, because every single society has got this kind of ethnocentrism, which this is what we call it, which practically means that you think that your culture is better or superior compared to other cultures, rituals and habits as well, or the other culture, really. And this is why globalization is so, conflictuous at the moment and problematic, because so many people want to live in other people's countries where other people believe that it's us against you and our culture is superior compared to yours. And this is how it's like such a global kind of cooperation, but a constant global conflict as well, and migration is not helping that whatsoever. Okay, be charged up with necessary emotional energy to make sacrifices for the group. That's really, really important, that you've got such an energy which will make you strive for possibilities to actually make a sacrifice for this group, or just make a favor or help this group, support this group. That's going to be very, very important, that you're making sacrifices for the group. Okay. Now, mobilization is not a matter of class at all, and Marx was also kind of convinced that it's only the class that will be kind of motivating you to do something, or to somewhat like move along, or to be mobilizing the whole group itself. Mobilization is not a matter of class, in my opinion either. Mobilization is a matter of ritual practice, common focus and attention, emotional mood, common emotional mood, high levels of ritual solidarity. That's really important. When people were going out on the streets in order to fight a case, any case, political, social, educational, religious, anything kind of a case, that was always a very high emotional spirit, solidarity, a good mood. All the big revolutions started that way from history as well. In Hungary, for example, 23rd of October, which we are approaching now, which is our big anniversary from 1956, that's how it all started, when our young people stood up against the Communist Party and wanted to fight them. And fought them, actually. So you can tell that it's a common feeling as well. Now, I'm wondering what you think nowadays. Do you think, because we are practically living in a new era where new media is kind of all over the place, and we are living in a place right now, or in a very weird phase of life right now, where we are actually forced to be online because of coronavirus as well. So not only do we have the means for online kind of mobilization and online activities, because we are living half of our lives online. Now we are living the full-on life online because we are quarantined majority of times, and because we've got a very weird phase of life right now with the pandemic. And sorry about it, I think I'm closing the curtain. Please excuse me for a moment. So, practically, what we need to understand is that mobilization could be possible within the online interface as well. But I was just wondering whether you think it's actually happening. So, do you think that an online interface is capable of gathering people for some sort of a mobilizational issue, like to fight against something, to form an opinion about something or stuff like that? Or do you think that the online interface is not strong enough for that? Have you ever seen a community that formulated online and also gathered offline maybe afterwards? Have you ever seen anything like that? Or have you ever seen a group which was forming online and fighting against something online? Do you think that mobilization and group kind of spirit is possible to formulate only in the online interface? How do you feel about it? Is gathering online the same as offline? What do you think is the difference? Do you think it's better or worse? Do you think you can create the same circumstances online as well as offline? And how is it easier or more difficult to kind of create the group spirit and the group emotions online? Do you think it's possible? Let's take a look at your answers later. Okay, now, from the 1990s, actually, conflicts have taken a new turning point as a result of globalization. I kept on implying to it in my lecture like 5 minutes ago as well. And actors have become quite beyond, or have gone beyond, the traditional frameworks of conflict and nation states as well, because nation states have become global now. You can see it too, that in some large metropolises and cities, London and all the rest of them, they do have like minority, the English people. I'm not sure if I'm correct about this one, but it's like 50-50 English people and people from other cultures in London. So all the big cities, metropolises, they have become like global, leading places or like geographical stances as well. And the main new social conflicts are not really class related anymore. We don't really, in the 21st century, we don't really see that like, oh, this person has got 5 university degrees or something. It's not really class related. Or this person belongs to this class or that class. We don't really see it that much. The Western social conflicts are rather human life centered, right? Terrorism, racism and discrimination, genocide, mass murderers, human trade, gay rights, rights of safety. These are all human related and not class related anymore. So we don't really fight for certain classes. Now we are fighting for certain groups of people, or human life centered conflicts are in the focus of attention at the moment, which is going to be rather important. Okay. Let's see some other approaches to conflict, shall we? Oh, how much time? 20 minutes have passed. Okay, we are still very good with time. So, everyone agrees that conflict is kind of endemic to the human condition. It's like, it's there. We just need to deal with it, that it's there, and conflicts will always be there and always have been there. The potential for conflict is intrinsic to the activity of two people relating to each other. So if there are two people who have got anything to do with each other, they will always have some sort of a conflict. Now, yes, whenever the actions of one person interfere with the actions of another, this is how Peterson actually describes conflict or actually defines conflict. Whenever two people interact with each other, that will end up in a conflict. What do you think about yourself, ladies and gents? How well do you think you're handling conflict? Do you think that you are good at resolving conflicts? Do you strive to be better at that? Are there any kind of very annoying things that you do within a conflict situations? Would you, or is there something you're ashamed of maybe, or that you're not happy in your behavior in general in a conflict situations? I'm very much curious. Please comment it in the comment section, and we will also talk about it in teams, how well you can be kind of fighting conflict. Peterson, the guy I've mentioned a moment ago, described 5 strategies in order to fight conflict. Separation, that's very typical. That's the very typical female nothing kind of like, have you got any problems? Nothing. That's it. Separation. I will explain all of them. Domination, compromise, integrative agreement, structural improvement. Let's take a look. Separation, this is the cooling off phase. That's whenever somebody's called or somebody's asked like, have you got any problems? And you say nothing, or what's the problem? Nothing. This is the cooling off period practically, with the intention of not really kind of pushing it all on the other person, just kind of returning to the issue later. You are just trying to hold your emotions back. You're trying to be more presentable in the future, and you're thinking that it's easier if you're not addressing the problem right then, or you just don't want to, or you're just trying to seek attention. That's another issue, but yeah, it's also meta. Domination. It is an attempt to persuade or coerce the other one into choosing the dominator's side of about the issue. So the domination is that you are not accepting the other party's point of view whatsoever. You are just trying to kind of like push your way onto the other person, and you're trying to make them act according to your own beliefs. And you are, maybe it's like coercive a little bit, so you are like pushing it on it. You're making it compulsory for the other person to pick it and to cooperate. Not a nice way of handling conflict. It's like a typical parental way that like they don't really seek or fight for cooperation. They are like, I'm your mother, I'm your father, that's how you should be doing because I told you so. Compromise. It is a search for a solution acceptable for both partners. This is when you take a sit down and you think that like, in order to make this life livable for the both of us, let's try and find a good solution, right? This is how it goes, a compromise. I'm finding that these issues don't really occur clean. So I'm thinking that like maybe you start off dominating the other party, doesn't really work out, then you can be separating. Let's cool off a little, let's just not address the problem, and then you can compromise. You can return to the topic later on. That's also an issue. Integrative agreement. Attempt to satisfy both sets of expectations. So this is like very similar to the cooperative one, or like this compromising one, searching for the best solution. This one is actually satisfying both people's needs. So this one is not only like in theory that like we're trying to find good solutions. This is actually like satisfying the needs. This is actually like cognitively doing for the other party or person. And the last one is a structural improvement influences how partners treat one another more generally. So this is like the whole structure of the debate. This is implying for the whole debate itself that like, does it start off, the tone, for example, does it start off with shouting at each other, crying? Is it all about like being silent and not being super like, being more chill and not being very intense within debate, within a conflict situation? So this is the whole structural kind of improvement of the whole debate, how partners treat each other. Conflict has been studied in conjunction with a lot of other relational variables, and one variable is going to be communication, of course. I mentioned it in the first class that cooperation is always going to be the number one kind of recipe in order to solve a conflict, or that's like a remedy really. But I've also mentioned that, in my opinion, communication is the number one issue that actually causes conflict. So it's like a double-edged sword. That was a horrible pronunciation. Sorry, double-edged sword. Is this correct? Hopefully, yeah. So poor communication is an absolute start off for conflict, and communication is a vehicle in many conflict strategies to collaborate with each other. That's going to be very important. Yeah. Okay, blah, 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 we don't need this. Yeah. Now, why do we think that communication can actually be a very important means of solving your conflict? Etymologically, the root of the word communication, this is so sweet in my opinion, according to the ancient Greek and ancient Romans. When we think about the root of communication, we always think that it's community. That's right, because communication is a community action, but it's not the main root of the word. You can go smaller. And the main root of the word, according to the ancient Greeks and Romans, is going to be monos, which actually means gift. So in the early sense, Greek and Roman sense, we give gifts to each other, to one another, by talking to each other. That's really beautiful in my opinion. Of course, we can all recall a conversation that was not at all a gift towards each other, for sure. But in general, it's a very beautiful approach to communication. We are giving gifts to each other by communicating. And communication is also related to other aspects of intimate relationships as well. When individuals are disclosing, opening up, they're more satisfied, more committed, because they are just... The more vulnerable you get in a relationship, in a personal relationship, for example, the greater the love will be for the partner, because you find cherish and comfort and understanding and a lot of other things. And when you disclose your feelings and your plans and your fears, you will be kind of more tied to each other, because you feel that the other person knows you more than anybody else. And if individuals are willing to disclose, the relationship will more likely continue longer than if a partner is locking up and not really willing to disclose about a problem, a plan, a fear, a happiness, anything. I'm not sure if you have met anybody in your life before who was a very tough nut to crack and who was really locking up in their ways of communication and in their ways of trying to solve a problem, not really disclosing about it. It's very difficult to deal with these people because you don't feel trusted. You feel like you're not involved in their plans and problems because they don't trust you, which might not be the case at all. And they don't feel good because they feel like there is nobody to rely on, even though they are the ones not disclosing about it and not willing to accept help, which is really problematic. I'm wondering if you've had this situation before and how you solved it, because that would be quite interesting. Now, love, of course, is a very important aspect of most romantic relationships and a very big means of cooperation and conflict at the same time, because loving someone unconditionally, they say, is only occurring between parent and child. So I know that that if I killed someone, which is not happening, but if I did, my mum would love me the same. She would think that I had probably the right reasons or something. But if you cheat on somebody else, that's not an unconditional love. That's a romantic love is never unconditional in a healthy relationship. A parent-child relationship most times, or 99%, is going to be very much a very unconditional love. Your parent will love you no matter what in a healthy relationship, of course. Yeah, in a romantic relationship, it's not happening that way. Love is an important aspect of most human relationships, as I've mentioned, and it's got plenty of different types. For example, eros. Eros, that's coming from Greek, of course, and this is the passionate love. Practically, this is the love between lovers, partners in general. There is ludus, which is the game-playing love. This is also, it's interesting that there is a Roman name, or a Latin name for this. Game-playing love, which is this, I've got you, but I'm open to other people. I've got this, I've got that. This is the game-playing, I'm trying to keep you, but I'm not trying to keep you that hard kind of love, which is, in my opinion, not really love. It's just yes, maybe love, but I wouldn't call it love. Storage or friendship kind of love. Yeah, that's like the very typical feeling that you've got for your friends and that you've got for your friend circles. You care about them. You try to help them. You try to make them the situations easy. You try to kind of cooperate and satisfy their needs. That's kind of the storage friendship type of love. Pragma, which is the practical love. Anything that is going to be not a theoretical love that I've got a crush on someone, but a practical love that I'm going to do something for this person. And that's going to be the love language of many people, acts of services, that like you do something for them, you're helping them, you buy a bunch of flowers, you do this, you do that. It's just like the practical love. Practical love is something that we gain from our parents as well, because our parents are the one who are buying us clothes when we are little and helping us go to school and cooking lunch for us and making us survive when we are not able to support ourselves because we are babies. You know, that's a practical pragma kind of love as well. Mania, that's like, mania is a possessive, dependent love. That can go into very dangerous, dangerous kind of situations as well. I'm not sure if you've ever had this kind of an approach towards yourself, that somebody would have a maniac kind of point of view towards yourself. This is dangerous. This is not good. It's not a healthy type of a love. It is a dependent love, which is going to be exclusive, wanting to kind of take the person for themselves, not letting them go, not healthy at all. And it can kind of end up in tragedy as well if some people have got this possessive way and the other person doesn't want to cooperate and don't want to be their love, then it kind of end up in tragedy. It can end up in tragedy as well when this possessive mania kind of love comes along, and this is the way of thinking, you know, like if he or she can't be mine, they shouldn't be anybody else's. You know what I'm implying for. So that's not a good love. And the last one is going to be the agape kind of love, altruistic love, which is this very selfless helping love. So practically the charity actions are the agape kind of, this is also coming from Greek, I'm very sure, this kind of a love which is like this selfless turning towards the other person, helping the people when they are in need, anything when they have got an earthquake, war, anything, and sending them supplies and food and stuff like that. That's kind of an altruistic love towards each other, very importantly. Now, yes, Richardson and his colleagues in 1989 found that passionate and selfless love styles were positively related to all constructive conflict situations. So the healthy, non-possessive, not the weird love, but this very pragmatic and eros-based, so like the very strong emotions-based love are very much good whenever a couple gets into a conflict. So it will kind of help them solve the conflict really easily. Whereas game-playing love was related to a negative conflict strategy, of course, because you don't feel safe. You don't feel that the other person loves you no matter what, and you don't feel safe in disclosing your feelings because you feel that, like, this is not a stable relationship. He or she is playing games with me, and if I open up really, I might end up losing them. If I don't open up, I might end up going mad. So it's just a lose-lose kind of, or a win-lose kind of a situation. Not good for you, really. And sexuality is the last thing I wanted to address today, I think, because our time is really, really going ahead. Sexuality is also an important aspect of most romantic relationships, and also sexual conflict is a particularly important conflict source for couples in relationships and premarital relationships as well. Now, before all that, the sexual conflict was much different because couples, especially in the very strong period of religion, for example, the Christian religion still doesn't allow, but it's the 21st century, and the rules are much more kind of free, if you will. So in a very typical, for example, Catholic family, sexual intercourse was not at all allowed before marriage, or it was not even a thing. In the 1900s, still in Hungary, for example, that's how it worked. And they did have very difficult sexual conflicts, mainly because each partner had just one partner for life, and their ways were much different from our ways nowadays, which is going to be kind of different sexual conflicts that we are facing. Deciding when, how often be sexual, it's also something that will have somewhat like, we'll need collaborative communication in the conflict in order to avoid it. And intercultural relationships may harden the situation, both love and sexuality, because intercultural relationships, and I'm not sure if you have got any examples for this, they do kind of say intercultural couples, there was a research about it, even saying I love you, if for example they don't speak each other's languages and English is the bridge that they use in their relationship, saying I love you, many people said in this research that it just doesn't mean a thing, and they much rather say or express emotions in their own mother language, because it's just, it feels more real than saying I love you, which is not your mother tongue, and it's just not your real feelings. So it happens quite often that intercultural couples are facing different like romantic relationship as well as sexual relationship problems. Relationship satisfaction in general. The conflict strategy used is more important to relationship satisfaction than the frequency of conflict. That's what research found. So it doesn't really matter if you're facing a bunch of conflicts until you're kind of having a very good strategy to solve it, right? Of course, we can say that dissatisfied couples will experience more frequent conflicts and more frequent kind of problems than satisfied couples. But if you do have a bunch of conflicts, but you do know how to solve them, and this strategy of conflict solving is good for both parties, is actually beneficial for both parties, then the relationship between strategy and satisfaction is going to be much higher. I'm not sure what sort of conflict resolving kind of methods and strategies you have got. I'm very curious what you're doing in a personal relationship, not business now, but let's stick to personal ones as well. They also say that in a very stable, good relationship, respect is going to be a very important aspect of close relationship, which is going to be associated with relationable variables such as love, sexual attitudes, disclosing, opening up about your emotions, relationship satisfaction as well, because respect has been shown to be a fundamental aspect of how partners relate to one another, and it should be connected to conflict itself. Yes, sex differences, we kind of have mentioned it, that within romantic relationships, we haven't mentioned it, the different sexes, the different genders will also have different coping mechanisms, and that will cause a bunch of problems to us. So in some research demonstrated that when women get into a conflict with a man, they use emotional tactics, criticism, anger, shouting, crying. That's very typical for a woman according to research, whereas men are more likely to use avoidance, turning their backs, going away, not dealing with this. If a couple does not have a very good strategy for this, for solving an issue, and one of them is shouting, the other one is turning their back, that's detrimental, that's not good. So you need to kind of try and get into each other's love languages a little bit more, and try to find what is going to be good for you as a couple, and seek relationship satisfaction as much as possible. 5 love languages. Let's leave it for next week. We kind of learned it, and I'm not sure if you were with us for the BA course. We did have an American lady who brought this research to us. We're not going to address it today. We will address it next week because the video is already like 40 minutes. So let's just leave it. I'm curious if you remember these, ladies and gents. But I will just stop it now. Let's go into Teams right now. Thank you so much for your attention. And we will leave this fun part for next week as well. Thank you very much, and see you in a minute in Teams. Bye-bye.